They saw her as a problem long before they had to admit she was a performer. Didn't doubt her talent, but doubted the way she refused to shrink. She kept moving, even when every step meant pushing against resistance. Not because it felt natural, but because giving up was never part of the equation. In an industry built on patience, her persistence read like a threat. She danced in a world that didn't expect her to lead. She took roles they didn't think she could carry, and stepped onto stages where her name wasn't even listed. But success didn't quiet the criticism. It sharpened it. Every win made the backlash more precise. "Do you really think you're a serious actress?" one headline read. So they tried to make her smaller. Like one critic said, she was too urban to be mainstream, too polished to be street. Easier to label. A Latina from the Bronx who didn't wait to be invited in. Stopping was never an option. "I used to live here," she once said, not as nostalgia but as proof. Proof that she had never forgotten where she started or how far she had to push to keep going. "I'm Jenny from the block." She grew up in the Castle Hill projects of the Bronx. This was working-class New York. Row houses, tight routines, and families that didn't ask much from the world except the chance to keep going. Jennifer was one of 3 daughters in a Puerto Rican household that believed in discipline, not shortcuts. There was love, but not much room for softness. And even as a child, she understood. The world didn't hand girls like her second chances, so she learned not to wait for them. At school, she was told college was the only path. At home, the rules were stricter. Performing was a dream, but not a plan. Jennifer wasn't rebellious, just certain that someone like her could make it, even if no one had before. At 18, she left home after a fight with her mother over college. Jennifer wanted to perform. Her mother called it a fantasy. They didn't speak for months. She and I butted heads. I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to try dance full time. So she and I had a break. She slept on a studio couch. There was no money, just the chance to keep going. She wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing the chance to work. Ballet, jazz, flamenco, hip-hop. 6 days a week, hours in front of mirrors, calluses on her toes, rejections that didn't even come with a reason. She was urban when they needed an edge, too ethnic when they didn't. No one had to say it. She saw it in the callbacks, in the way silence followed her into the room. It stung. But it didn't stop her from speaking through the work. She kept finding a way in. Through commercials, dance gigs, roles that barely made the credits. Sometimes just a face in the crowd, sometimes one line. But there was something the camera caught. A presence you couldn't crop out. Casting agents put her in the Latina box, but started to remember her. Still, she took what she could get. Sketch shows, music videos, a scene if she was lucky. And even when she delivered, the roles didn't change, just the lighting. She wasn't rising, just circling. At 22, she booked in living color a fly girl, not a lead, not a role with depth, but it was national, it was weekly. A foot in the door, but not a seat at the table.
First of all, we have a new fly girl coming all the way from Bronx, New York, Miss Jennifer Lopez.
So when Selena came, it didn't feel like a leap. It felt like a break in the pattern. She didn't walk in with momentum. A Puerto Rican woman from the Bronx cast to play a Tejana icon. To some, that alone was controversial, but Jennifer didn't just imitate Selena Quintanilla. She inhabited her.
When I did Selena, there was a lot of people who had a lot of emotions around it.
Dad, I'm not a little girl anymore.
I got to talk to all of them. There was a lot of beautiful memories, and then there was these difficult memories. So it was kind of me at a very young age sifting through exactly who the essence of this person was. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I learned from playing Selena, is that people have an essence to them.
She learned the choreography, the cadence, the grief. And she carried a cultural story on her back, one that rarely made it to the center of a Hollywood film. Jennifer didn't just play the role. She changed what the role could be. It didn't make her safe. It made her seen. The critics called her performance surprisingly good, as if expecting her to fail. Some said she was cast for her looks. Others framed her as a risk that happened to work. The applause always landed but just softly enough to leave room for doubt. But the audience saw someone they hadn't seen before, a Latina lead who wasn't a stereotype or a sidekick. The film hit. She made history. The first Latina actress to earn $1 million for a role. It was the first time she saw herself reflected, not in the character, but in the space she was finally allowed to take up. And that kind of visibility comes with a cost. Hollywood took notice. Her musical performance in the film led to a record deal, and she had no intention of staying in just one lane.
Do women feel the need to apologize for wanting it all? We shouldn't. We deserve whatever any other man on this planet has and deserves. And
within 2 years, she had a chart-topping debut album, movie career, and a nickname the whole world knew. J.Lo wasn't just a name, it was a phenomenon. She became a brand before that was a compliment. Jenny from the block. Catchy, defiant, but more than anything, a claim. She anthem saying, "I am here," wasn't asking the world to believe her. She was reminding them who she'd always been, just louder now and harder to ignore. But even that didn't land cleanly. She wanted to make clear she hadn't changed. They said that meant she had. The music was polished, the clothes too tight, the romances played out in public. They didn't just cover her, they dissected her. Dress by dress, man by man. At the 2000 Grammys, Jennifer walked the carpet in a green Versace gown that made headlines around the world. It was bold, nearly scandalous, and unforgettable. People didn't just talk about the look, they searched for it. So many times, Google had to invent something new, image search. It wasn't just fashion, it was power. The more control she took over her image, the more they called her difficult. The more ambition she showed, the more they warned she was too much. The paparazzi turned her body into a spectacle and her love life into a punchline. But the numbers told a different story. If You Had My Love went #1. Love Don't Cost a Thing ruled the airwaves. I'm Real made her the first woman to have a #1 film and album in the same week. The voice was questioned more than the work, but she kept delivering hits. And that was the part they couldn't explain. But it always came with a caveat. She was beautiful, but was she serious? She could act, but should she also be singing? And threaded through all of it was a kind of discomfort, not with what she was doing, but with who was doing it. She didn't stretch the line. She kept pressing against it until the boundaries themselves started to move. She didn't step back. She built a path through them. The roles shifted and deepened. She didn't pivot. She stayed the course. And slowly, the world began to catch up. In Hustlers, she played Ramona with no apology and no softening, a woman aging out of her industry, building something of her own, holding power, and daring you to look away. It wasn't glamorous. It was controlled. And for once, critics used a word they'd rarely had before: serious. There was Oscar talk, long profiles, a sense maybe that the conversation had changed. But the nomination never came. Not because the work wasn't there, but because the story they told about her hadn't changed. No matter how far she'd come, they still saw what they wanted to see.
Scarlett Johansson in Jojo Rabbit. Florence Pugh in Little Women. And Margot Robbie in Bombshell. Right.
Weeks later, she took the Super Bowl stage with Shakira. Feathers, fire, and Latina pride blazing across the screen. It was billed as a moment of celebration. But Jennifer knew what it also was. A reminder that even now, she wasn't enough on her own. 2 women, 2 icons. But where others got to stand solo, she had to share the spotlight. Not out of choice, but out of compromise. Still, she gave it everything. Because that's what she'd always done. She danced like the stage was hers alone, and reminded everyone watching who had earned their place. Not a manufactured star, not a passing moment, just a woman who never stopped showing up, even when they made her prove it twice. She outlasted the headlines and outgrew every box they tried to trap her in. Jennifer Lopez didn't treat success like a spotlight. She treated it like a craft. Something built, brick by brick, in full view of people who never thought she should have been there to begin with. She made herself visible in places that weren't made to hold her. And she learned the hard way that being first rarely means being welcomed for it. She didn't back down. She held her ground, not to be let in, but to make clear she belonged there all along. She had outworked the doubt, outlasted the silence. What looked like resilience was, in truth, discipline. The kind that trains itself in private and performs in public without asking for reassurance. Not in spite of where she came from, but because of it. She was named a global icon, but the real win was staying and never needing permission to do it. Jennifer built a business, led her own brand, headlined Super Bowl halftime, launched skincare, produced her own films.
I think it is a game changer to be able to feel like you're glowing without having to put on a ton of makeup. That's when you're the most powerful.
Not everything made headlines, but the work kept stacking. They called her resilient, not because she was untouched by failure, but because she never let it define her. She married the man she first loved, in a story the tabloids couldn't write for her. But Hollywood movies often not show if the happy end is lasting. And when life punches her, she's still here, continuing and growing. The Bronx girl walked into Hollywood and conquered Billboard charts.